Hi guys. So today what we're going to do is we're going to complete the last chapter in section 2. At least I'm pretty sure it's the last chapter. It's on internal and external communication. So since this is a business class, we're talking specifically about communication within an organization or a company and to those outside of an organization or company. So for example, we are at Bishkek International School. So internal communication would be communication inside the school among staff of the school. And external communication would be communication to those who don't work at the school. So in our case, that could be parents, or that could even be students, because you're technically parents are technically our customers, and you guys are basically the product, or I guess you'd be more like our clients, really. But anyways, so internal and external communication will be the topic of this particular chapter. The first thing we're going to do is go over a few definitions, just so you have some vocabulary to talk about this topic. First one is communication, which is pretty simple. Transfer of a message between a sender and receiver. So, you send a message on Facebook Messenger to your friend, and your friend understands that message. That is communication. Internal communication, again, between members of the same organization. Now, we're kind of really just talking about companies. So it would be among staff, the people who work at that company. So let's say, for example, we all work for Coca-Cola. Internal communication would be communication that's only accessible and is between workers or employees at that company. External communication is communication to those who don't work at the company. So let's say, for example, we have, again, Coca-Cola. We want to communicate, or we want to send a message to those who have bought bottles of Coca-Cola in the last 30 days. We'd be making an external communication because we're sending messages to our customers, not to employees of our company. And medium of communication is the way in which you communicate. So some examples include email, letters, or verbal communication, meaning talking to someone. Other ways we communicate also include WhatsApp, Facebook, social media, or it even could be through a video on YouTube like this one. Next definition, feedback. So feedback is the reply from the receiver, which shows whether the message has arrived, understood, and acted upon. So this basically means that someone has received your message and then either done something that you wanted them to do, or have completed some sort of task that you set them in that message, or they have simply sent you another message that says, okay, I understood it. So feedback is basically giving you either an action or a message that indicates that they've received that particular message. So in a real world context, let's say that you send a message to your friend that says, okay, you need to complete this part of our project. Maybe you're working on a group project with them. The feedback could be them sending you their part of the project, or simply sending a message saying that, yeah, I understood and I'll get it done. One-way communication does not require a response. So maybe you get an email that's just for information. It says, okay, the school is going to be closed for the next 2 weeks. But whoever sent that doesn't require you to respond saying yes or no or whatever. That's one-way communication. It's only from the sender to the receiver and no response is required. Two-way communication is when a response is required. So maybe someone sends you a message asking you for your opinion, or maybe the school administration sends you a message asking you for your opinion on closing the school. So they're asking you to send them a message in response to their message. So that's two-way communication. A message is being sent from the sender to the receiver, which is you, and then the sender is also expecting a response back. So one-way communication, no response is required. Two-way communication, a response is required, or a response is desired. And formal communication is when you are sending a message you're sending a message that is clearly linked to the company or organization you work for and uses formal language. So let's say that, let's go back to the example of our school, right? So let's say that Bishkek International School wants to send a formal message to their parents. So on that email message, it's going to come from an email account that's connected to the school at bis.kg. And there'll probably also be like a picture of BIS on the email and then a signature of the sender, which will include their position at the company or their position at the school. So those are all clear indications that this is a message that represents the opinion, and that represents the opinion, and that represents information that the entire organization of the school wants to communicate or wants to send. So formal communication means that a message that is supported by the organization that's sending it is being sent. The other thing that formal communication can mean is that professional language is being used. So we're not saying like LOL, or we're not using inappropriate language. We're using academic language. Academic language, or using language to be more polite than you normally would be with friends. So in an email, it'd be, "Dear Sir, we would like to communicate this piece of information. Sincerely, Mr. So-and-so." So yeah, basically there's professional language used, and then there are different signs on that message that this has been sent by an organization, and it is an official piece of communication. Okay, informal communication is something that you might send to your friends. Like, it's just using everyday language. It's not really connected to a company or a corporation, or even the school or any specific organization. And it's just to communicate on a friendly basis. There's no real business-related information included in that particular message. So really, like, formal is more for a business context, and informal is more like for friends. Communication barriers are factors that stand in the way of you communicating effectively with other people. So some examples could be like, maybe you guys don't speak the same language. Maybe you're trying to communicate English with someone, and that person speaks neither English nor Russian or any other language that you may speak. Or maybe you're trying to communicate with someone who has poor access to internet. Therefore, they can't receive your emails or your social media messages. Or some other communication barriers could even include, it could just be something as simple as that person doesn't have any context for the information you sent. So you sent them something and it uses a lot of like terminology or information that they're just not familiar with. Okay, internal communication examples. So again, remember internal communications within a company. So right here we have like a company notice board where maybe messages are put up. Or right here you just have one employee talking to another employee. Other internal communication examples could be emails that are being sent to employees. They could also be maybe video messages that are shared with a group of employees. External communication messages, right here, this is an example of Amazon. So Amazon is sharing information with a customer. They're telling them about their order via their website. That's a good example of external communication. Right here, this is a commercial for Heinz ketchup that's being shared with potential customers. So this specifies an effective communication cycle, which is really just like, this is kind of honestly just how communication works. Someone's sending a message, and then that person is sending feedback that says, okay, I've received this message. So there are a few ways to decide how to choose communication methods. So the first one is, let's go back. So the first one is speed. So for example, sending an email is a lot quicker than sending a letter. The second one is cost. So really nowadays with electronic communication, cost isn't a huge factor. I guess maybe, previously when internet was more expensive, or when you had to pay for data, it might have been cheaper to just call someone. Message details. So, for example, maybe if you are sending, if you're sending a message that is firing someone, it would be better to send it an email rather than a WhatsApp message. So you want to use a more formal type of communication, right? Leadership style. Remember some of the leadership styles were like autocratic, laissez-faire, etc. Based on your own personal leadership style, you may prefer to send an email, you may prefer to call people, you may prefer to post things in a notice board. That kind of really depends on the leader who's in charge. The receiver again. So the receiver might be your friend or might be your boss. And if it's your friend again, you might just send a Facebook message. If it's your boss, you might send an email that is written in formal language. And the importance of feedback. So let's say, for example, you just want to send a Merry Christmas message to all of your employees. You're not really expecting any feedback, so you can just create a video and just send that. If you are expecting feedback, then you'd probably send an email and you'd ask for feedback in that message. On the other hand, we had feedback but also record. So a lot of times when you're sending communication, certain types of communication should be recorded or could be used later. A great example of this again is if someone is being given, or if you're complaining about someone's performance. So if you're sending an email to someone saying, hey, like you didn't do your job properly, a lot of times this could come up later because if they receive 2 or 3 emails that says they're not doing their job properly and they still haven't done anything, then you can say, hey, you received these emails, I told you weren't doing a good job, here's the record of me communicating this to you, but you still haven't done it, so this is why I'm firing you. Okay, so sometimes communication is sent to record that a complaint has been made or to record some type of communication with an employee or with other people in an organization, just to keep track of what's been sent. These should be like pretty obvious to you: written, verbal, visual. People don't really send business letters anymore. Notices on a board, text messages would be probably more prevalent. Reports would be electronic. Email and social networking are obviously pretty big. Again, if a letter seems more physical, but a memo could still be sent. That would just probably be electronic again. So technically it's written, but like, meh. Verbal, face-to-face, telephone, video conferencing, meetings, team briefings. I'd probably say that like almost all of these are just done over Zoom nowadays. So again, they're kind of more in the realm of electronic communication, but rather than just text, even if it's over Zoom, then, you're speaking to someone and someone's speaking to you. Some of the advantages are, I think, over text are the opportunity for immediate feedback. Like you don't have to wait to get a response by email. Someone can immediately tell you what they think about what you just said. And also, like, message can be reinforced by speaker. That kind of means the speaker can like see how the people they're talking to are reacting, and then accordingly change their message or just give more information. And then the disadvantage could be it's difficult to track if people are listening. Actually, just use a different color. Just because, like, for example, if you have a Zoom call with 27 different people, you can't really tell whether they're paying attention or not, or whether your message is getting through. Process of feedback is longer, potentially again if you have more people, and there's no permanent record. So unless your call is recorded, there's no real record that you said what you said. So for example, if you're making a complaint against your employee, you might want to do that over email since there'll be a record there because your emails are generally saved. Visual, this one's a bit different, okay. Kind of talked about this, films, videos, presentations. I don't know if team briefings would necessarily be visual. Meetings, that's a bit weird, but okay. Films, videos, and presentations would definitely be visual. So a presentation could be like what I'm showing you right now. Well, I guess that would be within a video. Posters also, although these are becoming more and more rare. Charts and diagrams are frequently used, again, in presentations. They can be very appealing, and they can make a written message clear, but there's no feedback possible. Graphs can be hard to understand, and oftentimes visual communication is not enough to communicate a message. You still need like text or face-to-face verbal communication. So coming back to communication barriers, you could have a problem. Let me just go back there. Okay. So you could have various problems with the receiver. The receiver may not be able to understand your message for some reason with the medium. And by medium, we mean the way in which the message is sent. So, maybe for example, if you send a text message, but that person's cell phone isn't working, that's a problem with the medium, with the way that the message is being sent. Problem with sender. Maybe the sender, again, is not communicating in an effective way or a language the other person understands. And problem with feedback. So problem with feedback is a little bit different. That one could just be that maybe there was no feedback that was asked for, or the feedback that was given was just not relevant to the message that was sent asking for feedback. So there can be a variety of problems associated with each one of these. These are just the general categories of communication barriers. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and answer an exam-style question together. Manuel is an HR manager for a large bank. His responsibilities include internal communication, individual workers, and groups of workers. Sometimes he wants to send a message to all 15,000 workers employed by the bank. Some workers complain that unless they spend time reading notices or email messages, they fail to receive important information. So question A is define important internal communication. So remember, internal communication is communication within an organization, generally with employees, between employees. Identify 2 benefits to the bank of effective internal communication. So I'd say that one benefit is just that everyone kind of has a shared goal. So everyone understands why they're doing what they're doing, which can improve motivation for all employees. And I think the second thing is that this can help different groups work together to create a better product, right? So maybe you have 2 teams who are communicating internally, and if they communicate internally effectively, then it makes it a lot easier for them to collaborate on projects or collaborate on work to end up with a much better product than they otherwise would have had. 2 possible barriers to communication. I would say one is just the fact there's 15,000 employees, so it can be difficult to communicate with that many employees. I would also say that 2, it could just be the fact that the HR manager only seems to be communicating by email or sending messages. And this may not be effective for all employees, especially since they're complaining that they don't want to read notices or email messages. Explain 2 ways in which Manuel could communicate with individual workers about their pay and working conditions. So one way would be face-to-face, but probably the better way would be email, because then there's a record that he has communicated this information, especially since like pay and working conditions can have like legal ramifications. Or for example, if someone isn't receiving the pay that they feel they deserve, or they don't feel like they have adequate working conditions, they might file a lawsuit. And in that case, it's much better to have recorded communication in the form of email, could even be a letter, or maybe even a Zoom call that's been recorded. If you think electronic forms of communication are always the best ones to use when communicating with large numbers of workers. So, I mean, you could have any number of answers to that. I would say that I agree personally, just because it's much more, it's just a lot easier. Because, for example, if you're just sending an email, you just press a button and everyone receives that email. If you're sending a letter, then you need to generate like 15,000 different letters and then send this by post, which can be more expensive. So I'd say the electronic forms of communication are cheaper, more efficient, and then also faster, right? Because if you're sending a letter, then you need to like put it in the post box, or you need to send it to some sort of distribution center and wait for a person to physically deliver it. Versus with email, you can just send it instantly and everyone receives it instantly. So that was just kind of a neat little explanation on internal and external communication. I hope that was useful to you and that helps you complete all of your different exercises. Have a nice day.